Welcome to the TV Lounge, a place where we get together to view and discuss lesser-known TV series. You know, there are plenty of places to discuss the latest hit shows, but we're here to tell you about some older programs you might not have heard of or watched. Some are quite good, and others, well, they're worthy of discussion and dissection. So have a seat here in the extra recliner and join us in the TV Lounge. Welcome to another episode of the TV Lounge podcast. Hi, I'm John Bailey.
And I'm Andy Bailey.
And I'm excited because maybe that doesn't come out right, but we're halfway through the Crime Traveler series. This will be the fourth and then halfway point in the series. And I like the title of this one, Andy. You remember what it's called?
Yep, The Revenge of the Chronology Protection Hypothesis.
That is a tongue twister. But it's better than the last episode of Crime Traveler.
Fashion show.
Now, you remember last time we got together, we talked about some of these programs that were going to be pilots or possible pilots and movies for the Sci-Fi Channel.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially the one we're both looking forward to.
Sharktopus.
Yes, Sharktopus. I've got to see that one.
I really hope that that's a for sure thing.
Well, apparently the Sci-Fi Channel has had, as you know, quite a bit of success with their Ghost Hunters franchise. So they're looking to expand the reality-type series with several new shows. Now,
okay.
I don't know whether these have actually been picked up or whether this is just somebody's doodling on a napkin in a restaurant. But the list that I have here includes a few that sound kind of interesting and some that you're thinking, huh? The first one on the list is called Marcel's Quantum Kitchen. Now, what kind of a impression do you get when you hear something like that?
I guess I think of someone cooking recipes with chemistry and beakers and test tubes to make a souffle.
You know, you said one word there that this picture brought to my mind. You said beaker. So I'm thinking the chef from the Muppets.
Okay.
I'm thinking these guys, the science guys, are doing quantum cooking. But what the real description is, this fellow by the name of Marcel has a catering company. People make these requests for really outrageous and outlandish parties or events, and he and his team have to put together something that reflects what the client is looking for.
It seems like something that you would see more on the Cooking Channel or the Food Network than
rather sci-fi.
But
unless, of course, we can bring some science experiment into the preparation of whatever it is they do. Then there's Force of Nature. It's about an average guy who just happens to be a feng shui master.
Okay.
Now, that sounds sci-fi related, doesn't it?
Yeah.
What he is good at is, I guess,
arranging furniture.
Yeah,
maybe that's a show I want to watch.
A show about, you can go home and have your spouse tell you to arrange the furniture, put the couch on the other side of the room, just so the room looks bigger.
Huh.
But apparently this is about clients who come to this fellow, and they are in desperate need, it says here, of his help to transform their environments.
Okay, so there's the science fiction of it.
Oh, I got it.
Never mind. I just can't make it work. I don't see how this is a sci-fi show.
Okay. How about the Latimer Project? This one actually sounds kind of interesting. Jason Latimer is a 3-time world champion of magic, and he owns Latimer Corporation. It's an illusion design firm. They create illusions for magicians.
Not tricks.
No, not tricks. They're illusions. What they do is they take an idea from the concept to the finished creation of an illusion. The thing that I'd like to know, are we going to learn how the trick is done?
Right.
Or are we just going to watch them, sitting in the shop, putting the pieces together, and then the magician performs the trick, but we never know how it happens?
Yeah. Okay, so this guy's company, is this like somebody that David Copperfield would hire to create a trick for him? Or how does that...
Either that, or I'm thinking that one of those world-class magicians would contact these folks and say, look, this is what I'm trying to put together. Now, can we build it? And then these would be the guys who would actually create, the physical parts needed for the illusion.
Okay.
The next one is called Mr. Impossible. They say when the world's best scientists and engineers can't get the job done, they turn to one man who is known as Mr. Impossible. He's a rogue inventor who pretty much takes the impossible and makes it possible. Paranormal Files. Now, this one might actually be pretty good. It's described as a tense, high-octane drama documentary that brings to life the stories of people who have lived through paranormal experiences that defy explanation. Now, there's a lot of shows that deal with paranormal things, like Ghost Hunters.
Yeah, and there's lots of the UFO shows,
and they seem to do well. So Paranormal Files sounds like it's going to be just another one in that same classification. Now, this one kind of perplexes me a little bit. It's called Face Off. It's called an exciting new competition/elimination series that explores the world of special effects makeup artists. Now, each episode involves incredible reveals as we see a finished result of the competitor's work. The show goes beyond simple special effects and incorporates many different skills like prosthetics, 3D design, animatronics, sculpting, puppeteering, casting, and molding.
That show actually sounds like one that, I don't know, I'd be pretty interested in watching something like that.
I'm just not quite sure, until we see one, how are they going to make this a competition elimination unless they're given some sort of a goal to meet by the end of the program, and whoever is the most convincing or the most surprising or something like that will be the, won't get eliminated.
Right.
Here's one called the Dome Experiment. We've always heard of these environmental areas called domes.
Mm-hmm.
And what this one's going to do is take a dozen people from all walks of life, and they're going to put them in one of these sealed environments, and they're going to have to rely on each other for food, shelter, entertainment, security. They say that these people will face a series of challenges and experiments designed to expose the true nature of humanity. Now, this doesn't sound like one of those where people get eliminated. So I'm not quite sure what the end result on this one's going to be, other than if some people don't do well, you just watch them go bonkers.
Right. Is this one of those things where there are no clocks and nobody ever knows whether it's day or night? Is that
probably.
Type of thing?
It's probably one of those, because it is a sealed environment.
It could be. I mean, maybe it could turn into a Lord of the Flies type situation. That could get pretty fun to watch.
And
if in the pilot episode we see a conch shell somewhere, I don't know.
Watch out. Yeah. The final doesn't have a title as yet, but they're calling it an Artifact Search Series. It's described as a fast-paced action-adventure series that travels the world in search of some of history's greatest relics and artifacts, all of which are believed to hold hidden powers and mystical significance for ancient and modern cultures.
So it's kind of a reality Indiana Jones.
And that's exactly how it's described. It's a kind of an Indiana Jones type adventure with Da Vinci Code style connections to things, so that you can find the hidden truth and the alternative theories to all of these supposed mystical objects.
Interesting.
But that is a list of some shows that we could be seeing in the near future on the Sci-Fi Channel. But right now, we don't have to wait till the future, because we can jump right into the 4th episode of Crime Traveler. And the title again?
The Revenge of the Chronology Protection Hypothesis.
This episode of Crime Traveler begins with Holly Turner giving a lecture on time travel at the Institute of Time. She references people like Stephen Hawking and ends her talk by stating that time travel is something that will never be achieved. After the lecture, everyone is milling about outside the auditorium. We see a shot of a woman working at a desk. She has a portable television on the table beside her. On the TV, a news report is beginning. At this point, Holly is approached by a Professor Bernstein. He offers his thoughts on Holly's speech.
Miss Turner.
Professor Bernstein.
Yes. I must say I greatly enjoyed your lecture. with reservations, and I agree with you about the immutability of time.
Thank you.
Of course, it's all hypothetical. Despite your father's remarkable work, time travel will never actually be achieved.
If you say so, Professor Bernstein.
Yes.
Just then, Holly's attention is drawn to the TV newscast. She sees a man on a gurney being put inside an ambulance. It's Jeff Slade.
Slade is currently at St. David's, where he is awaiting major surgery. His assailant has been identified as John Crowley, a known criminal with several convictions for violent assault and armed robbery. Police have not yet issued a statement, but we anticipate receiving one within the next few hours.
Apparently, Slade has been shot by a man named John Crowley. Holly rushes from the institute to the hospital where Slade is being treated. She asks a receptionist at one of the stations about Slade's condition.
There's a detective, Slade. He was shot by a man called Crowley. Now, he's been brought here.
Are you a relative?
No, I'm a friend. How is he?
What's his name again?
Slade. Jeff Slade.
He's still in trauma, I'm afraid.
When was he shot?
I'm sorry?
When did Crowley shoot him? What was the exact time?
It was 6 o'clock.
Exactly 6 o'clock.
Yes, madam.
Having learned the exact time that Slade was shot, Holly runs from the hospital and drives straight back to her apartment. As she enters the building, we see Danny, the maintenance man, vacuuming the entryway. Danny attempts to talk to Holly. He said she came in just a few minutes before. He wants to know how she did that. Holly brushes off his question by complimenting him on the good job of vacuuming that he's doing. Of course, she's headed for the time machine. As she preps everything to travel back in time, Holly spots her lecture notes entitled Chronology Protection. It's pretty obvious here that Holly intends to go back in time to try to do something to prevent Slade from being shot. As she fires up the machine, we see Danny in the hallway with a cloth doing some cleaning. Behind him, the vacuum cleaner suddenly comes to life and the lights in the building begin to flicker. The time machine stops and Holly has been transported back to 8 a.m. that morning. She goes to the police station in an attempt to find Slade, but he has just been called off to investigate the murder of an artist. And in typical Jeff Slade fashion, he's a bit late getting to the crime scene. He manages to get in a dig at Morris and then is briefed by Grissom.
Found the dead body yet, Morris? I'll give you a clue. It's the one that isn't breathing.
Nice of you to show up, Slade.
Morning, Chief.
You're late.
Not as late as him. What's happened?
Time of death was about 10 o'clock last night. Shot in the back of the head while he was working. Probably didn't hear anything.
Any signs of forced entry?
No. No, front door was locked. Garden door was open. Through there.
So whoever it was could have come in from there and...
Exactly.
It turns out that the murdered artist was a man named Ken Jabara. He was an up-and-coming talent. Grissom informs Slade that his paintings are worth thousands, but now that he's dead, it'll be more like tens of thousands. Slade wants to know if any paintings are missing, but Morris says that according to Jabara's catalog, all the paintings are there. But then Slade notices an empty frame on an easel. He concludes that it might have had a painting on it when the murder occurred. Grissom and Morris leave Slade and Nicky Robson to continue the investigation. They begin by interviewing Mr. Kelly, who lives in the next apartment. Kelly is the one who reported hearing the shots.
And I heard a shot. Must have been about 9:45.
And you're sure it was a gunshot? I mean, how do you know it wasn't a car backfiring?
I know the sound of a shot. 10 years in the army. Came from next door.
And what did you do?
Well, I went in there because that's where the phone is and called you lot. Then I came back in here, lit a fag, and that's when I saw her.
Who?
She was coming out of Jabara's. She was carrying something. About as big as that. Then she hurried down the road, and that was it.
When Mr. Kelly said the woman was carrying something as big as that, he made gestures the size of a painting. When Nicky and Slade leave Mr. Kelly's residence, Nicky tells Slade some information about Ken Jabara, including information of an ex-wife, Louise.
He was married and divorced acrimoniously, by all accounts. He was stinking rich, but mean with it.
Right. What about the ex-Mrs. Jabara?
She owns a shop on the Westmore Road.
Right.
Oh, it was a woman Kelly saw.
Could
Nice work, Nicky.
Slade spots Holly across the street and goes over to meet her. He says he thought she had the day off to attend a mad scientist conference. Holly tells him that the conference was cancelled, saying that the organizer, Professor Bernstein, couldn't make it. Next, we see Slade and Holly driving in Slade's car. He's taking them to Holly's place to use the time machine, but Holly tells him the machine has a problem and can't be used until it gets fixed.
Where are you going?
Where do you think we're going? We're going to your flat.
No. No, stop the car.
What do you mean?
Just do it.
Holly.
I didn't mean time travel. That's not what I meant.
Well, what did you mean? How else can you help me? We go back in time, we see who pulled the trigger, and we solve the murder.
No.
Hang on, you cancel your day off. You turn up at the scene of the crime before you've been assigned to the case, and you come looking for me. If you don't want to use the machine, why are you here?
I can't use the machine, even if I did want to.
Why not?
It's the gravity simulator. There's a malfunction in the booster circuits.
How long will it take to fix it?
It'll take me a month just to pay for the parts.
Okay, fine. I'll drop you at the office.
No.
What?
Well, I thought I'd stick with you. Why not? It's my day off.
You want to stick with me?
Yeah.
Holly says that she wants to tag along with Slade since she has nothing else to do. They go interview Louise Jabara. She is a little bitter about not getting what she thinks Ken Jabara owed her.
So he's dead? What's that got to do with me? I didn't kill him.
When did you last see him?
I don't know.
Week ago? Month ago?
Maybe a couple of weeks. These days I only get to talk to Ken through his solicitor.
Oh, you're trying to come to a settlement.
I'm trying to get what's rightfully mine. Ken had perfected a system of non-cooperation. I'd have got what I wanted in the end if I hadn't starved to death in the process.
Jabara's ex-wife points them to an art dealer who handled Jabara's paintings, Brett Levinson. As they're leaving, Holly asks Louise if Jabara knew a man named Crowley. She's obviously trying to find out how John Crowley fits into the story and how he comes to shoot Slade. Walking back to the car, Slade asks Holly about Crowley. Holly says it's just a name she heard. Just before they get into the car, Slade notices that Holly is wearing the countdown watch from the time machine, but he doesn't say anything to her about it. Instead, he tells her to wait in the car while he goes to make a phone call. He calls the institute where Holly is supposed to be speaking and asks to talk with Professor Bernstein.
Professor Bernstein, this is he. Who is this speaking? I'm glad you're there. I was told you might not make it.
No, I have no plans to miss the conference.
What about Holly Turner? Is she there?
Yes, I believe she's our next speaker. Do you wish to speak to her?
No, that's fine. I'll call back. Thank you.
So Slade now knows that Holly is indeed at the conference and with him. She must have time-traveled, but he doesn't say anything to her about it when he returns to the car. Next scene, we're back at the cafe from the first episode, the one where Holly first told Slade about the time machine, and they're sitting at the exact same table. Now when Holly asks Slade about the phone call, he tells her what he knows.
You spoke to Bernstein?
Yeah, he didn't cancel and your machine isn't broken. You've time-travelled them.
How did you guess?
You didn't exactly make it difficult. I saw the watch. What's going on?
I can't tell you.
You told me you weren't going to use the machine again. Not to solve crimes.
Yes?
So what's different about the death of Ken Jabara?
It's not Jabara. It's you.
When Slade questions her, Holly refuses to tell him why she has time-traveled. She does, however, mention that it has to do with him and not the murder of the artist. Slade tries to find out what is going to happen to him.
Would you mind telling me what, exactly? I take it I'm not about to win the lottery.
I can't tell you. Look, I wish I could. But I have to think of the consequences.
What consequences?
All right, I tell you to cross that street. And you do as I say, then a car swerves to avoid you, and everyone in the car is killed. Now, that is my fault. I have killed them. We're not alone, Slade. Everyone's destiny is tied up together. I mean, I shouldn't even be here talking to you.
Slade and Holly go to visit Brett Levinson, the art dealer, at his gallery. Slade asks Levinson about his relationship with Jabara.
I heard it on the news. I have to say it's a great loss to the art world, an incalculable loss. Jabara was at the peak of his powers.
How do you feel about it personally, Mr. Levinson?
Personally?
Did you know him?
Hardly at all.
But you have been to his studio?
I bought from him, yes.
According to his wife, You were in and out all the time.
Out rather faster than I was in. He wasn't a sociable man, Mr. Slade. I'm sure Louise will be the first to tell you that. There was a lot of animosity between them.
Holly asks Levinson about how the price of Jabara's paintings will now increase. Slade reminds Levinson that according to Jabara's records, Levinson purchased 3 paintings for £90,000. When he asks where the paintings are now, Levinson says he wishes he knew, and he wishes he had them, but he sold them to a Saudi Arabian gentleman. When Slade and Holly leave Levinson's, Slade continues to press Holly for information about who Crowley is. At that moment, John Crowley walks past them on the sidewalk. They start to take off after him, but Crowley disappears. Holly tells Slade that he mustn't meet Crowley, and she tells him why.
He's a man who's going to shoot you.
What?
He's the man who's going to shoot you. 6 o'clock today, you're going to get shot, and there's nothing we can do about it.
Back at police headquarters, Morris tells Grisham about a clue he has uncovered relating to Louise Jabara. It is a letter written to Ken Jabara by Louise. Morris reads it to Grisham.
Ken, I have written to you. I have rung you a dozen times, but you still refuse to even acknowledge I exist. You ignore my solicitor.
The entire letter, Morris. Get to the point.
Well, she threatens to kill him.
Hearing this, Grisham sends Morris and Nikki to search Louise Jabara's house and work. She says to look for the missing canvas, and she also wants them to find Slade, but Slade and Holly are at the police station using a computer for finding information about John Crowley. They pull up a police file on Crowley.
John Crowley, age 35. Burglary, armed robbery, aggravated assault, GBH. He's been in and out of prison all his life. More in than out.
Yeah, but he's out now.
Let's go and say hello.
Slade decides that they should pay a visit to John Crowley. Holly doesn't think it's such a good idea. She thinks they should avoid Crowley, to which Slade replies that he doesn't want to meet Crowley, he just wants to find out who he is, and then he'll avoid him. There's no answer at Crowley's apartment when Slade knocks. Slade says he can't break into the door because it has 6 locks, so he decides to break in through a window.
Inside, Slade says he's looking for anything that might tie Crowley to Ken Jabara. Holly finds a book in which Crowley has written a list of names, and he has circled the name Sutherland. Holly says she knows that name but can't place it. Earlier in the episode, when Slade and Holly were walking to Levinson's gallery, they passed a business called Sutherland Jewelers. But before Holly can remember that, Crowley returns to the apartment and Slade arrests him for the murder of Ken Jabara. Meanwhile, Morris and Nikki question Louise Jabara about the threatening letter she wrote to her ex-husband.
Do you deny writing these letters to your husband?
You threatened to kill him.
Twice.
They're just words.
I still think it's quite a coincidence. You send these letters on the 14th and just 2 days later...
Look, if I was going to murder him, do you think I'd have written to him to advertise
found
it?
this sitting around the back.
At that moment, a constable interrupts them and shows them a painting he has found. It is the missing canvas. Along with the painting is a shirt covered in blood.
At the police station, Slade attempts to question Crowley, but every question is met with silence. So Slade has Crowley locked in a cell. He tells Holly that he can keep Crowley locked up for 24 hours. And if Crowley's in jail, he won't be able to shoot Slade. He thinks he has changed the past and saved himself. In another room, Louise Jabara is being questioned by Kate Grisham, Morris, and Nikki Robson. She explains about the bloody shirt and taking the painting.
I still had the keys to the front door, so I let myself in. I don't know what I was going to do, argue with him, shout at him. But when I got in, he was already dead.
So what did you do then?
I went over to him. That must have been when I got blood on my shirt.
You didn't call the police?
I was going to, but then I saw the painting and I thought, why not? I wasn't in the will, I knew I wasn't going to get anything from him, and so I only took what was rightfully mine.
However, Grisham believes that Louise killed Ken Jabara. When she goes to the jail to pick up the paperwork to charge Louise Jabara, she learns that Slade just arrested John Crowley for the murder. Reading the charge sheet that Slade wrote up on Crowley, Grisham declares it bogus and demands that Crowley be released immediately.
Now we see Slade and Holly at an art auction. The painting being bid on is one of Jabara's. The bidding is at £300,000 and climbing. As the bidding continues, they spot Levinson in the audience. Jabara's painting goes for $450,000. After the auction, Holly and Slade question the auctioneer about Brett Levinson. They learn he has had some financial trouble.
Mr. Levinson used to do a lot of business with us.
Used to?
Well, it's fairly common knowledge. Mr. Levinson made some unwise investments. I understood he was no longer dealing.
Slade and Holly decide to go question Levinson again. They realize the paintings Levinson sold are now worth considerably more than what Levinson paid for them. Slade wants to find out more about the man who purchased the paintings from Levinson. At the same time, we see Crowley entering Sutherland Jewelers with a gun. Outside, Holly and Slade pass on the sidewalk, and Holly suddenly makes the connection to the jewelers from the note in Crowley's notebook. Slade concludes that Crowley must have been there earlier to case out the jewelers. Just then, Crowley comes out of the jewelers and runs right into Slade and Holly, much to everyone's surprise.
Crowley takes off running with his gun drawn. He fires a couple shots at Slade, but misses. Crowley then runs into Levinson's art gallery. There is a couple there with two small boys. He takes them hostage. Moments later, police are stationed outside Levinson's. Grisham arrives and goes to where Slade and Holly are. A policeman approaches with a telephone and says that a phone link into the gallery has been established, and Grisham places a call to Crowley, urging him to surrender. Crowley says he will negotiate, but only with Slade, and he wants Slade to come into the shop. Knowing what Holly has told him, Slade tries to avoid going in. He says he's not a trained negotiator. Grisham says that Crowley has threatened to start shooting the women and two kids in the shop if Slade doesn't go. Holly tries to stop Slade, but he tells her to go back to the machine and return to her own time zone. He says that at least this proves you can't change the past. So, Jeff Slade reluctantly enters the art gallery after making Crowley release the hostage family but not Levinson. Seeing officers moving closer to the shop, Crowley makes Levinson open the door to a storage room which has several paintings in it.
As the clock outside begins to strike 6, Slade distracts Crowley and rushes him. They struggle for the gun and it goes off. But it is not Slade who is shot, it's Crowley. As Slade is temporarily shocked by this development, he is struck from behind by Brett Levinson, who grabs the gun. Levinson then shoots Slade, as Slade realizes that the paintings in the room are Jabara's. The police storm into the room to find Levinson pointing the gun at Crowley. Slade is then wheeled out into the ambulance and transported to a hospital. Crowley's body is also wheeled out. At police headquarters, Levinson spins his version of what happened.
I shot Crowley. I didn't mean to, but...
What exactly happened, Mr. Levinson?
The police officer, Slade, managed to grab hold of Crowley. There's a fight. There's nothing I could do. The gun went off.
So Crowley shot Slade?
Yes. Then Crowley dropped the gun and I snatched it. I didn't know what I was doing. I aimed the gun at Crowley and I fired it.
Holly returns to her apartment and talks to Danny. He asks how the big lecture went, and Holly sadly says she was proved right about her theories. She returns to the time machine with 2 seconds to spare and returns to the present.
Next, we see Levinson phoning the hospital to inquire about Slade's condition. He is told that Slade is very critical and they are waiting to operate. Hearing that, Levinson goes to the hospital, slips on a white smock, and walks past the nurse's station. Following Levinson, Holly has rushed to the hospital and she stops at the desk to ask about Slade. The receptionist is a bit puzzled. She says Holly has just asked about Slade and ran out. We now see Brett Levinson sneaking into Slade's hospital room. He picks up a scalpel and uses it to cut the lines on Slade's IV. When Holly enters the room, Levinson tries to attack her with the scalpel. Suddenly, Levinson is grabbed from behind by Slade, who subdues him just as Morris and Nicky rush into the room. They arrest Levinson. Back at police headquarters, Slade explains everything.
Levinson had to kill me. When I saw the 3 red circles down in his basement, he knew that I'd realized he'd lied. And after that, everything would make sense.
So Levinson killed Jabara because of the paintings?
He was going out of business. All he had was the 3 red circles. He paid $90,000 for them, and with Jabara dead...
They'd be worth almost $1 million.
He came in the back way, into Jabara's studio. He shot him. And then a few moments later, Louise Jabara came in through the front door.
So, why the elaborate pretense, the hospital and all of that?
Because I didn't have anything on him. Not for Jabara's murder, and certainly not for my own. So, when I came to, I set a little trap.
You pretended to be hurt so that Levinson would be forced to come back and finish you off.
A final scene between Slade and Holly has them discussing the events of the incident and Holly's use of the time machine to travel back to try to save Slade from being shot.
I owe you.
No, you don't.
Yes, I do. You saved my life. You and the machine. If you hadn't travelled back...
No, I didn't save your life. I nearly got you killed.
No, that's not true.
You don't understand. If it wasn't for me, you wouldn't have got shot.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you're right. Because if it wasn't for you, I would never have heard of Crowley. And if I hadn't gone after him...
You wouldn't have been shot.
Looks like you owe me.
Wait a minute.
That's okay. If a case comes up and I think you and the machine can help...
Forget it, Slade.
I'll be in touch.
And that ends Episode 4, The Revenge of the Chronology Protection Hypothesis. And we are now halfway through the series.
Next time, Sins of the Father, in which Slade is framed for stealing diamonds, and it's suspiciously like what happened to Slade's father Jack nearly 5 years ago. Using the time machine, can he prove that both Jack and he are innocent?
Well, we've just finished the 4th episode of Crime Traveler.
And I have to say, the title of this episode has got to be the best so far. The Revenge of the Chronology Protection Hypothesis.
Yeah,
very nerdy and awesome.
I was going to say, try saying that 5 times real fast. Yeah, it's a great title. Now, in the beginning of this one, Andy, the thing that I noticed, when Holly's lecturing, she says in her lecture that time travel is beyond the reach of science right now and can't happen. But when Professor Bernstein tells her later that time travel will never be achieved, in other words, he agrees with her, she kind of acts contradictory to what he's saying instead of agreeing with him. So I was wondering, is she contradicting what she said in the lecture?
Yeah, I guess that is a little bit... I was sort of under the impression that what she was kind of trying to get across in the lecture was that unless you would kind of accept this philosophy of their chronology protection hypothesis, that unless you do that it will never be possible. Yeah, when she talks to Bernstein, she obviously has kind of a secret or something.
Now, when Holly goes back to her apartment, you remember that exchange she has with Danny? He asks her a question, and she sidesteps by complimenting his job of vacuuming the carpets.
Uh-huh.
Now, don't you think that's just another example of them trying to portray Danny as some sort of dim-witted maintenance worker? And I noticed when she goes in to use the time machine, there's a pretty good shot of her lecture notes. You can freeze frame those, and the document is really only a few sentences about how time will protect itself, and it mentions the paradox of a man going back in time and killing his grandmother, and then the printout just repeats those same sentences over and over and over.
Oh, it does?
Yeah, until it fills the page.
That's hilarious.
When Holly and Slade are accessing Crowley's file on the police computer, did you notice Slade reads Crowley's age as 35? You remember what Crowley looked like?
Oh, yes.
There's no way that actor is only 35 years old.
No.
And it's really kind of stereotypical, though, isn't it? They could have made the bad guy look a little better, but it's like Danny, the dim-witted maintenance guy. Okay, the bad guy has to not only dress poorly, he has to appear, a
big scar on his face.
Right, he's got to look, unshaven and unkempt, and his teeth have to be bad. So that way we know he's the bad guy.
Exactly, and a big black trench coat.
Oh, yeah, I forgot. Big black trench coat. Anyway, I was going to say, there's no way this guy looks 35. This actor has to be at least 10 or 15 years older than 35. Now, when Slade goes to Crowley's apartment, do you remember the door does indeed have all those multiple locks?
Uh-huh.
But I think only one was locked. We learned that when Slade gets inside.
Uh-huh.
The rest are all chain and deadbolt types that had no outside access. So, since Crowley wasn't in the apartment, he couldn't have locked all the locks from the outside when he left, just the one main lock. So when Slade says he can't break into a door with 6 locks, that's wrong.
It doesn't make any sense.
Doesn't make any sense. There was only one lock securing the door.
Well, and why in every show like this, they always just kick in the door. Well, that's just what they do. They just kick in the door. But so they obviously, I felt like Well, I mean, in looking at that now, it was kind of a choice of the writers, because then after that he goes up on and climbs along the roof and, pretends he's like on a balancing beam. And...
Right. Didn't you love that when he's up on the roof and he's going across so he can drop down to get in the window access, or however it was he got in through the balcony? He's walking right on the edge of the roof. Well, he's on the roof.
He's got a flat roof.
Yeah, he's got the whole roof to walk on. But no, he's got to do this tightrope act on the edge of the roof.
Right.
Also, when they're in Crowley's apartment, they have no authorization to be there. They don't have, Crowley's permission. They don't have a search warrant.
They don't have probable cause. They
They have no reason to be there at all.
Now, one thing that I kind of thought about, Holly makes the decision she sees the news report and then she decides to go back and try and save Slade.
Mm-hmm.
In the episodes up to this point, she's been really harping on, you can't change the past. If you go back to the past and try to change it, you'll just end up being the cause of whatever happened. And she kind of just doesn't take any of her own. I thought it was a little strange almost that she decides to go back and try it anyway.
She kind of violates one of her own rules from the beginning.
Right. And I guess she kind of wrestled with that a little bit and tried kind of not to interfere, but really she ended up kind of causing everything that happened.
But now you'll remember when she first went back, she really didn't want to tell Slade anything that was going on. She didn't want to warn him, but he kind of forced it out of her.
Right, that's true. And that's one thing that I was kind of thinking as the episode went on, it's been pretty well established so far that if they go back and try to change anything, it's not going to change. That they will end up being involved in it and being some cause of what actually happened. And so through the whole episode, I kind of was like, well, it's just not going to work. No matter what you guys try, Slade is going to get shot in the end. And so I just kind of felt like I knew what was going to happen. But then it gets to the point where Slade got shot and then he's in the hospital. And I kind of thought, well, obviously he's going to live because they're not going to kill off the main character. But I was kind of pleasantly surprised with the kind of twist at the end, when he actually was pretending that he was shot and the bullet was in the book. And so in the end, I thought it kind of had a cool payoff, more than I was actually expecting from it.
The one thing that I liked about it, too, was when he arrested Crowley and threw him in jail, and he said he could just leave him there for 24 hours, and so problem solved. And then it's Grissom who comes along and lets Crowley loose.
Yeah, and I really have to say, I thought that was terrible, terrible protocol. I just can't... If she came and saw that Slade had booked someone into jail and just sort of didn't even bother to talk to him about it or find out why and she just lets him go, it just seemed like a really kind of rash, stupid decision to make. Not very well thought out.
But if she hadn't, then the episode wouldn't have worked.
It's true.
Well, overall, I thought this episode was better than the previous fashion shoot.
Oh yeah.
In the fact that the events regarding and relating to time travel were easier to follow and seemed more structured. So in my mind, it was good to see this type of episode in which the whole point of things was to try to influence events, but the time would make sure nothing really changed in the end.
Yeah, I actually, despite the funny little things, I thought that this was a well-written episode. I don't know, I really enjoyed this one a lot out of the ones that we've watched so far. So overall, this was an episode I enjoyed watching and thought it was really interesting.
Okay, I think that pretty much wraps up our look at Episode 4, The Revenge of the Chronology Protection Hypothesis. Sorry, I just had to say that again. Next time, we will be back with the 5th episode of Crime Traveler here on the TV Lounge podcast. Thanks for joining us in the TV Lounge. We'd love to hear your thoughts and comments as well. You can email us, the TV Lounge Podcast @gmail.com, or visit the website and leave a comment. We're at tvloungepodcast.blogspot.com. See you next time here in the TV Lounge.